question 102 of the Secunda Secundae. The topic for this video is observance, and I am Dr. Thibault. When we look at the virtue of observance, it is one of the potential parts of the cardinal virtue of justice. So when we look at cardinal virtue of justice, we have religion and piety and equity. So observance has 17 questions involved. We just got out of piety, which only had the one question, so we have a bit more to cover this time. So St. Thomas's structure is to look at the different parts of the virtue and then the associated vices. This first question is simply introducing the virtue of observance in itself. It's a very short section. Now, of the three questions, the first is observance. Is it a special virtue? And yes, it is. As most virtues associated with justice is, they are almost all special virtues because they deal with some particular part of society. So religion was a special virtue because it was directed towards God through religion. So religion gave worship to God. Piety was also a special virtue because it's proper worship to one's parents or kindred, your extended family, or your country, or your friends of your country, right? So really, when we think of fatherhood and fatherland are the two terms that is used by St. Thomas. So how you treat your country and how you treat your parents, your family are specific, right? They're not how you treat people in general. Therefore, they are a special virtue. And now observance is a special virtue because it aims at proper worship and honor which are due to people of particular dignity. So if it's a clergy person or a politician or a teacher, right, whatever the particular relationship is determines the appropriate observance. So because it's all particular rather than general, it is a special virtue. And St. Thomas points out that observance is distinct from religion and piety, which makes sense since piety was distinct from religion, right? Because they're directed at different people. Now, when I said worship, if you haven't seen the previous videos, you might be triggered by the idea of worshiping your country, or worshiping your parents, or worshiping somebody of honor. Isn't worship God alone? A primary understanding of worship? Well, yes, yeah. If you're talking latria, remember latria. If you need help with that, go back to the section on religion. Latria is the highest form of worship, which is given to God alone. Latria. We are not dealing with latria now. The Latin, which is what St. Thomas wrote this in, uses the word cultus, or a derivative of cultus, which can be translated worship, but not the same worship as latria. It's care. That's the most literal translation of cultus is care. So one shows worship to holy places by taking care of holy places. One shows worship of holy vessels by taking care of holy vessels, or images. But this is not latria. Therefore, when we care for our country, when we care for our parents, when we care for people within our society that are owed dignity, that's different than what is owed to God. Now, within this section, like with piety, when St. Thomas is talking about worship given to God, worship given in piety, worship given in observance, he is using cultus for all three of those groups within this section, just so you're aware of that. But if you were to go to religion, the religion section is no longer cultus, it's latria. Now, observance to pay worship and honor. more. So dignity is owed to those who govern. Uh, those who govern is to move certain ones to their due end, right? So this might be so foreign to us as modern people, particularly if you're from America or the Western world. We typically don't have very high opinions of our politicians. We don't have high opinions of those who govern in terms of corporations or in any way. Right? We're very anti-authority as a people. This is not the world of St. Thomas. St. Thomas believes, quoting from Aristotle, that the purpose of law is to direct man towards virtue, man and woman. The purpose of law is to direct people towards living a virtuous life. The purpose of governing is to move people towards their due end, moving them towards their fulfillment, their excellence, their arete, their eudaimonia. You're moving people towards beatitudo. Right? Their fullness is the goal of one who governs. Now, that's very different than today. Right? Today we say, "Oh, I represent the people, so whatever the people want, that's what I give them." Right? That would be what a good politician might say. If the people want legalized prostitution, we give them legalized prostitution. People want legalized marijuana, we give them legalized marijuana. I represent what the people want. Well, this is very different than the medieval approach, where to govern isn't to give people what they want, it's to bring people to heaven, is their view. So, a very different framing of to govern. Therefore, if one governs appropriately, they are helping us to obtain beatitudo, even from an Aristotelian perspective. Beatitudo is the goal. Therefore, they are helping us even when we are unwilling to help ourselves. Because of this, we should respond by offering those people who are leading us to heaven service. We should obey them. We should repay them in ways in which we can repay them. Now, these are not things we think of modern politicians. Uh, Serve our politicians, obey our politicians, repay our politicians. They work for us, not recall. Right? So this is very different than the medieval approach. The same goes for church leadership. Since they govern as well, they govern the church. So, what is if you believe your bishop is not telling you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear in order to get closer to God, closer to beatitudo, then even if you don't fully understand it, the proper response to the bishop should be to serve, obey, and repay the bishop in which way you can. Same thing in terms of a corporation or any other institution, right? Very countercultural. um, and the idea is that we should repay them to the degree in which we have received benefit. That is why this is under the section of justice, because justice aims at equality. Right? If a person has given themselves to the betterment of the common good, and the common good has benefited, right, by good leadership, we should repay good leadership. Now, if we have bad leadership, we also have those instances where a person has shown bad leadership and the breakdown of the common good of society, well, then they should be punished. Right? This is not repaying good to evil. This is repaying good for good. So there is still accountability in this. It's just that our politicians, in the mind of St. Thomas, sets high goals and expectations for them, and then St. Thomas turns to us, the populace, and sets high goals and expectations for us. High goals for the leadership, goals for those who are being led. It'd be nice to be perhaps in a mindset where we're more less suspicious of our leadership, right? We're very suspicious of them and anti-authoritarian in terms of our relationship with them. But wouldn't it be nice to think, our bishop is trying not to tell us what we want to hear, but what we need to hear. Our politicians tell us what we need to hear. I think to stay out of politics on this, but people like Bernie Sanders, I really appreciate because people would say to him, "Well, don't you think this?" And he'll go, "Well, you're going to disagree with me, but this is what I think." Uh, right? You might not agree with his perspective, but I like that he tells you specifically what he thinks. It's a There's a few politicians who do that. Even when it's unpopular, they tell you what they are actually going to do. And it's refreshing when you hear a politician who tells you what the truth is, right? This is what I plan to do because, and this is why I'm going to do it. You might not like it, but this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm going to do it. Um, Sometimes, well, anyway. Now, piety, when we're ranking these virtues, piety is greater than observance. I pointed this out in an earlier slide for Article 1. The first is religion, which is aimed at God directly, right? That's the point of religion, is aimed at God directly. Um, and it's giving God God's due directly. So that's the highest, right? And then there's piety, which is giving our parents their due, because without them we wouldn't even exist, right? So because we wouldn't even exist, we owe them our entire lives, right? So piety towards our parents is also the next. Right? Life comes first from God, but through our parents. And then uh, also under piety is to our fatherland, or motherland, however you want to gender the country, because you owe them, you know, your land, your job, your currency, your security. Right? There's a lot that is owed to your country, so that is next. And then lastly would then be other people of honor within our society, other people of dignity within our society. Um, and we owe people of dignity within our society respect. That's what's due to them. That's what is equal. That's what's just. But no matter how good this stranger is to society, they are not as, I do not owe them as much of a debt as I owe to my own mother. Because without my own mother, nothing else matters. Right? The person could get me good, affordable health care. Well, that's wonderful. But if I didn't have a mother, I wouldn't even be born to appreciate the healthcare, right? If I didn't have a country to defend me, I wouldn't even have a place or a way in order to take advantage of that healthcare. So the debt owed to our parents and our country is greater than that, even to a person of dignity. And clearly, that which is owed to God is the greatest. Without God, there wouldn't even be an electron in the entire universe, never mind me, right? Therefore, we owe God the greatest. So, in conclusion, observance is a special virtue owed to people of honor. We get into this a bit in the next two questions, so we'll flush this out a bit. We're just looking at observance in itself at this point. Um, Observance offers service, obedience, and repayment. Obedience is lesser than piety due to the justice, as I just described in the very last slide, that we owe more to our parents than we do to strangers, even if strangers are great. Although the proper response to these strangers isn't disrespect, it's obedience, it's observance. Um, Observance was the proper, is what is due to them, right? Piety is what is due to our parents and our country, and religion is what is owed to God in justice. So we just give each their due. That's what is truly just, is giving each their due. And each of them are different, therefore they each have a specific virtue because there's a specific relationship. This is very realistic, right? I think it's very practical to think of this. Right? Can generalize, love everyone. Well, but you love things differently depending on the relationship you have to those different groups, right? You love God differently than you love your parents, which is differently than you love a person of great dignity, right? They're just different ways of doing it correctly. That's all we have on observance.